girl AP, affectionately known as APY Blog, and I'm here with the best co-host ever.
Hey guys, it's Nimade, or That African Butterfly.
And we are back for another episode of More Than My Size. I believe this is episode 12. We did take a brief hiatus, and I think it's a great time to discuss the topic we're going to discuss, because that hiatus was because I was having a mental breakdown. I was dealing with the struggle, and quite honestly, I am not done with the struggle, but we felt like, why not talk about mental health? Why not? Because it's a real thing that happens to real people. So let's just get right into it.
Yeah, and I've been going through it. I almost didn't want to record today. We had a whole nother topic, and I was like, I can't talk about that. Like, I can't fake the happy today. And so we were like, let's just keep it real then. Like, let's have an episode about how we both feel, which happens to be crappy at the moment, and that happens sometimes.
It does. One of our aims with More Than My Size was to make sure that we showed all sides of people who reside in fat bodies to let people know we live very regular, normal lives, and we're not all sitting at home depressed and unhappy. But the reality is, being depressed or unhappy is not something that is relegated just to fat people. It's something that happens to many people. In fact, the numbers on mental health illness are significant. And if I can remember from my last blog article I wrote, it was something like,
It's like 46.6,
yeah,
46.4%
it's like
of
24
all
million
adults
people, basically. It's
will
more
have
than
a
that.
mental health illness at some point in
Right.
their life, because it's not always long term. Sometimes they have episodes, but about half of all Americans will experience a mental health concern or a
Right.
mental illness at some point in their life.
And globally, that number is even larger. But just speaking to the U.S., like she said, more than half. But one of the things that I think we wanted to touch on was just where we're at with things in real time. There's often this push, especially when you're in the space of being like an influencer or a blogger, anybody with a kind of public status, right? I hate these phrases. God, I do. I know with a public kind of status, there's this expectation that you are, grand all the time and life's so great, and when you do deal with problems you don't let everybody know. However, thank God that's never been my platform. So people have known for the longest time that I am a basket case, and I'm okay with that. It took me a really long time to come to terms with my mental health. It's something I've dealt with my entire life. So whereas Namade said that for her it's more like episodes, for me this has been lifelong. I have episodes that are harder than most, but
Oh no, I have severe manic or depressive disorder.
oh,
Like I
okay.
had to
Well,
go,
here we go.
I had to do like the
Testosterone in the
testing.
building. Yeah.
Yeah.
um, and it's something that I'm medicated for. So what happened was, about a week before my medication was running out, it only takes about a day to two to get CVS to fill it. I went to refill my prescription, and then I saw that it was pending on the app for like a couple of days. So then I got a notification. It was like, we've reached out to the physician. They haven't responded to our request. Now, I will admit, my doctor's practice is not the greatest at responding to anything unless you walk up in their building or you get somebody on the phone, which good luck. So I reached out. I did the whole, like, they have a little automated system you can call. You can just say, I need a prescription refilled. So I did that. I didn't get a response. So I finally called and I'm like, hey, I got the front desk lady. I'm like, can we get Dr. Blank to fill my prescription for bupropion for XL, which for those of you who don't know, that is Wellbutrin. That's the name brand. And she was like, okay, let me check. I'll get a message to her. And then she's like, oh no, like this is one of those medications that requires you to have a visit before you can get refilled. First of all, nobody told me that. I'm quite regularly in contact with my doctor's office. And second of all, how are you guys going to hijack my medication so that I'll come in to see you? Now, I already have a visit scheduled, right? Like, I have a visit scheduled because it's just that time of year. Annuals have to happen, physicals. But I'm like, that's not for like another week or two. So I have to suffer through these episodes for another week or two. And the toughest thing about it is withdrawal is a very real thing with any type of medication that you're on. So it's been a hellish, I've been at this for about 2 weeks now, and I have about 2 more to go.
And it's probably like just really hitting you the most now, because even when you start on the new medication, they normally have you like layer it on before you go to full dose. And when they want to take you off of it, they never just go stop. They go
They
take a
tighten.
couple less, do half of. So the fact that you went from 60 to 0 and now haven't been on it for 2 weeks, like,
Right.
yeah.
And I couldn't, and everything just kind of happened all at the wrong time. I had a crappy experience with a surgery I was supposed to have about a week ago, a little over a week ago. Things did not go as planned during that surgery. I was left with more questions than answers, and I'm waiting on an appointment for that, which is, thank God, on Tuesday. But it's frustrating because I'm kind of like, I don't need all of this happening at one time. And then, unfortunately, like, not unfortunately, my store launched at the top of the beginning of all of this. And so I'm trying to manage my store. There's new components to it. I'm trying to get the Facebook shop together, the Instagram shop. I got a blog I'm running. I'm doing packages and fulfilling orders. I'm looking at new things for APY. It's just a laundry list of things. And let's not forget that I'm a parent. So I've got 2 kids. Thank God they're on spring break right now. I got 2 kids that live here and one who's in Connecticut, but she's still my child, so I have to take care of her. It's been rough. It's been rough to maintain any kind of normalcy right now. I'm all over the place. My focus is non-existent. Took me like 72 hours to write a blog article for Sunday. I was supposed to have a date with my husband yesterday afternoon at the Botanical Gardens in Atlanta. I had to cancel on that because I could not pull it together, and I don't have it in me to fake the funk. This is not one of those moments where you can just kind of tuck it up and push through. So there's been a lot of me laying in the bed, a lot of this, and a lot of old movies in rotation because those things keep me calm. How about you?
I'm a mess at the moment. I'm trying to speak and not, sometimes when I'm going through it, I have this period where like every time I open my mouth, I just want to start crying. So I get really like quiet. So that's where I'm at right now. So apologize in advance if at any point I start crying, but I'm trying to hold it. I don't know. I had a health scare with a family member yesterday. So it's been really just stressful for me. And then like I was okay most of yesterday, and then like this morning it like really hit me, and so I've just been kind of down, and it's a day. But I mean, I've actually had really good couple of weeks, to be honest. So like it almost stinks because it was like, I think that what was happening, which I know sounds silly, but I think a lot of people who live with a mental illness, I think we all do this thing where like when you're good for a long period of time, you're like, oh, maybe I don't have it anymore. Like, oh my gosh, maybe I'm cured. So like it had been like so long, because the thing with my depression is that like I have what I call episodes where it's like far worse, where I'm like actively sad, crying, can't do anything, blah, blah, blah. And then in between then I'm like mostly like okay, but not really like, oh, life is great. Like I'm not actively where it's like, oh, I want to hurt myself or not be here. But like on a normal day, on a good day, I'm sort of like indifferent about being around, to be honest. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't want to go anywhere, but like if I could go to the beginning again, I might race to the egg a little slower and let someone else take this life path. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need to be here. So because that's sort of like my normal currency of life, and it's just my depression, I've had a few weeks of like not only where I haven't had it bad, but I haven't had that either. Like where I like think about life, I'm like, it's not so bad. This earth thing, this living thing, it's not so bad. So having like weeks of that, I fell into the trap where I was really starting to be like, oh my gosh, maybe it's gone. And granted, I'm on medication. I didn't stop my medication, thank God. But I was really starting to feel like a little like, So having it like all come crashing back, I'm like, like it almost makes it feel worse because I was feeling so good, but I'm blessed that I was feeling so good. And I'm hoping that this is more of like an incident, like where I'll feel better in like a couple of days. I'm hoping it passes. So, but it just stinks because I just am like, I just drained. I'm just drained. And the thing is that people so much think about like the feelings when they talk about mental health, like, oh, you feel this, you feel that. So then they are like, just change the way you think and blah, 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 and the way you feel. But it's not just that, it's your literal brain chemicals. And it's literally like the way your brain is operating. And that affects your physical because your brain controls your whole body. So like, I literally just feel exhausted and drained. And I just wanted to lie here. And it's because of what's happening in my brain with my depression.
Absolutely. The crazy thing I think is that there's this moment like that you talked about where you're having like these really regular normal days and things feel really I remember being at this point because I had gone a while without medication. I don't know that I ever shared that, but like I only got back on medication probably about a year ago. I would say it's hard. That's probably why I'm to have an appointment. Yeah, but nobody said anything. But I got on medication about a year ago, and so I had gone about after my pregnancy. They took me off of it. So from 2016 to 2020, I had gone without medication. And so the way that I feel now is how I was feeling as everything was building up last year that made me have to call my doctor and be like, it's time. Like, it's time for me. Because I know myself at this point. I was diagnosed 27 years ago. I was 9. So I very much am well aware of my cycles. It took me a while, I think, throughout my life to figure out when I was having I'm not considered bipolar, but I do go through manic episodes where I'm not sleeping, so on and so forth. So when I started hitting all those marks, I was like, oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I don't enjoy the roller coaster ride. For some people,
Right.
rush and they're able to like accomplish the most. But that's not me.
No, I hate it.
So I hate it. I don't like it. And it's totally uncomfortable for me right now.
Well, especially because like for me, I feel like I'm drudging through, like to the point where like when I was having, especially when it's bad for me, where I'm having more bad days than good days, when I have a good day, I'm just like, oh, like I even asked my therapist if I was bipolar because I was like, I am so not used to feeling good that I'm wondering if I'm having like a manic episode because I feel so good. And she's like, no, you're just used to operating while feeling so bad that you feeling good feels so foreign to you. I'm like, it does, because I can do like all these things and like everything isn't so hard. Because it's hard when you're going through it to remind yourself that it's like your depression that's making it hard for you to like comprehend certain things, and your depression that's making it hard for you to want to do things, and your depression that's making it hard for you to find that motivation. It feels like you're just being like a lazy bum, or at least that's what I unfortunately would like tell myself in my mind, like snap out of it, get to it, like what is wrong with you? But it really is your depression. But it's hard sometimes to acknowledge that until you come out of it and you're like, oh yeah, that was my depression, it wasn't me.
I think one of the toughest things is my sleep is one of the first things to go.
Same.
So my sleep habits are trash right now, which is awful because I had gotten to the point, I have like my handy dandy planner.
You
Okay.
love that planner.
I love this planner so much. And so I've been really working to adhere to a schedule. For those who don't know, when you deal with any type of ADHD or depression or anything that messes with your ability to focus, adhering to structure and scheduling, while it's so necessary, is one of the hardest things.
Well, that's the worst part about depression, is like everything that makes you feel better is everything you don't want to do. Like sticking to a schedule, go work out, go get sun, do all these things.
Oh my God.
They'll all make you feel better, but they are the last things you want to do.
So working out, I know this is going to sound crazy because I'm fat, and that is why we have this show, but working out is one of the things that makes me feel the best.
Of course.
And honestly, like, I need it. I never thought that I would be at the point in my life where I'm like, I crave exercise, but I literally do, because it gives me those endorphins, yeah. That serotonin boost. And yesterday, which was probably one of the more bad days, I got up, I put on my workout gear, everything, but I only did a soft yoga stretch. I did a yoga stretch. Then I went to get on the bike. I was on that bike for a minute and 30 seconds. It was like, I don't want to do this. It just got off. Yeah. Because I could not mentally get my mind to the point where it was like, yeah, let's go. Yeah. This morning, I was not having anything. like that. I rolled out of bed, like all of the regular morning routines that I normally had, I skipped them because I'm like, I'm gonna go get on this bike now.
Mm.
And I got on my bike, turned on Law and Order SVU, and got busy because if I didn't do it that way, I wasn't gonna do it. And I can't let these days build up where I'm not
Yeah.
exercising. Like it's just not a good look for my mind
Right.
and my body and the way it feels. So I just decided I'll do some soft yoga stretching tonight. And then I was able to proceed with my day. And I felt better, and I've been more productive today than I was yesterday when I could not like.
Well,
When I
that's why they also tell you like when you're having your period to work out because of those endorphins. Granted, chocolate also does the same thing. So
dark chocolate,
is it dark chocolate? Yes, well.
and I hate dark
But
chocolate.
the working out helps. So they do tell you to do that. But yeah, like I said, it's just hard because it's literally the last things you want to do, but it's doing those things that will help you feel better. I usually give myself like a day or so to feel how I feel before I start trying to push those out. Because sometimes you're just in a funk and you just need to have a mood. And if I try to like happy my way through it too soon, it's just going to be worse later. Like
Right.
sometimes I just need like that moment. But I did want to ask you, why did you go off of your medicine? Because I know for me, it took me a while to be like consistent about my medicine because I would get on it. And then when I started feeling better, I'd get off of it because there's such that stigma about medication. And I'm like, I'm just a mentally strong person. I don't need this. And then I finally got to the point where I'm like, I never think, maybe I shouldn't use my inhaler because I want to have mental, you know what I mean? Like, we don't do that with our physical medication. Like, I'm never like, yeah, I think I'm just going to not do my blood pressure medicine. But like with our mental health medicine, I feel like a lot of us are like, okay, we're ready to trudge through on our own. And then we shouldn't be.
That wasn't it. So like I said, I was on medication throughout my pregnancy. And when I had him, they took me off. Because first they took me off at the beginning of my pregnancy. I couldn't get back on until I was 34 weeks along because his lungs and stuff were developed enough, and we have to be concerned about that. So what happened was between July 2016 and by the end of the year when I got my thyroid diagnosis, when they removed my thyroid in 2017, they wanted to see if my depression was actually a direct result of thyroid disease, which is a thing a lot of
Yeah.
people don't know that, but thyroid disease can actually.
Oh, please remind me to tell you, I found this new person on TikTok who talks about thyroid, and she's like amazing. And she talks about how like the doctors will sometimes test, like there's different types of thyroids they can talk. I mean, it's stuff but she talks about like the other types and how they test wrong and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh, brilliant. So my
Yeah,
man said,
me. So they kind of wanted to see if all the years of depressive episode, which in my opinion, I do think that my thyroid had a lot to do with. I think my mental health was probably one of the first red flags at the time, especially because I was so young. But we also know depression can be brought on by environmental circumstances. And at that time of my life where I was diagnosed at 9, my family, my domestic life was a hot entire mess. And my family was just going through a lot at that time. I was also being bullied in school. So there were other elements to that that made them diagnose me. But I didn't get diagnosed with major depressive disorder until I was an adult. I think I was about 19 or 20. So they took me off to kind of see if once I got on the hormones and the medication, if it would make a difference. And it did. I had depressive moments, but they were definitely linked to what was going on with me physically, like my hip and all that, me having to start using the cane, the walker, all those things. And I knew for a fact that taking medication was not going to make me feel better about that. So I was just like, I opt out. I got to a place of regulation.
but I do think that's the thing is that those of us who actually live with depression are
Yeah.
able to recognize when we are sad and when we're depressed. And I think like a lot of people who don't necessarily go through that will sometimes just sit here like, oh, I'm sad, I'm depressed.
Because depression
And
gets paid as sadness all the time. It's one of the first symptoms. And then we have to take into consideration things like seasonal affective disorder,
yeah,
which I also was diagnosed with because so anytime we hit any month after October, by the end of November, I know I'm going downhill.
I used to cry from October to March. That's actually what triggered me moving to Florida, was that my seasonal affective disorder was getting worse and worse. Like it started being bad, and like I would go from like really good grades to like lower grades, and then as I got older it got worse, and then like by college I was crying October to March, and
And
the
that's why
doctor
we're in
wanted to,
Georgia. And
right,
that is
the doctor
why
wanted to put me on meds, and I was like, I'll just go to Sunshine, thanks, bye.
we've started doing things like vacationing in the winter time for me. And just getting out on those things is helpful to me. I think this go round, honestly, last year when I decided to get back on medication, it was because I recognized that like I may not love being handicapped or disabled, but I've learned to cope with it and deal with it. What I was feeling was not a sadness brought on by anything
Right,
specific.
it was actual depression.
I have episodes. I was feeling very unlike myself, very dreadful feeling, very hopelessness,
Yeah.
very suicidal ideation was trigger warning. Let me say that, but suicidal ideation was prevalent, and I've been hospitalized before for my mental health, so I really have no desire to go back to the
Yeah.
hospital. No offense, it was a great help, but it's not where I want to reside. So,
Right.
once I started feeling those things, I finally broke down and told my husband, and of course he was like, I kind of was peeping if there were certain things, but I wanted to wait till you, because what he'll do is if he notices, he'll just straight up tell me. Like he's been on this ride with me for 16 years now, so he knows like
Yeah.
what time it is. Oh wow, February will be, we hit our 16th. Okay. Anyway, so it's been a while. You know, he's aware. So when I started to feel like I was having those moments in my mind where I was beginning to think about ways. I'm not going to say that because I
Yeah.
don't want to get dinged on YouTube, but that's when I called my doctor and I'm like, I need to see you and I need to see you now. And I need to get in here. I need you to prescribe me this. And she's not a psychiatrist. She is my primary care. But the thing is, I have a history. So I was able to tell her, like, I know what I need to be on. And instead of titrating me on the dose, like instead of increasing my dosage, I told her, give me 300 flat out. Because I didn't feel like I had the time to waste to be trying to whatever. So when I initially got on it, it was tough to jump right to 300 immediately. So
yeah, because you have that weird feeling where you still feel bad, but then you feel good, and then you're just like,
no, it was more like I just felt bad. Like I was just, I felt more emotional than ever. Like before the medication came on, so it was about like 2 weeks of me really struggling through the tears. By the third week, I was starting to even out, and by the fourth week, I was back to my normal, regular self and was functioning a lot better. So not being without meds this time around, this was not a choice that I made. This wasn't something that I was like, yeah, I want to come off the meds. This was like an oversight, basically, and it pissed me off when I called the doctors. Like, I've not been in the best place with my healthcare team, especially after the surgery and the surgeon not coming to see me and discharge to explain to me any of the things that happened.
yeah.
So I'm like afraid to get on the phone because I don't feel like I have it in me to be the Christian that I am. I don't feel like I have it in
You want to curse them all out.
the nice person that I normally could be tactful. I'm in a very emotional state. So if I call, I might start cussing somebody out and screaming at somebody, and it's not going to accomplish anything. So I have avoided calling my doctors to talk because, and I'm dreading my appointment coming up next week when it's time to talk to the surgeon because I just want to air him out. Like, how dare you?
But I mean, how dare he? He should have
Like,
said
how
something.
dare you do that? And if you guys don't follow me on Instagram, you don't read my blog. Like, I had a surgery the other day. It was meant to absolve some issues that I'm having with my uterus, and instead, the doctor went in and basically did nothing, which I'm paying $3,000 for, because he was ill prepared. He went in and things weren't what they expected, and they couldn't complete the task. And I get that things happen, right? And you can't always control everything, but he didn't even come to talk to me. I left that hospital thinking I was A-okay and that my problem had been solved and fixed and my life was going to go on to be even better than it was. And instead, I had to find out from my husband that he didn't complete the task. So that just added to my depression. I won't even lie. I cried through the first week of recovery. Just every day I cried. Every time I had to change a pad, I was like in tears. Like, I hate the healthcare system. It made me angry.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to be in a better space about my anger because being angry is really not going to do anything but hurt me, right? So like, I have to figure out a way to be at peace with this. And so I'm waiting until I'm face to face with this doctor because maybe by Tuesday I'll be calmer. I don't know. If you guys see me on the news, you know what happens. Like, And it's tough when you're dealing with hormonal issues. And unfortunately, when things are off with your reproductive system, it is going to have an adverse effect on your hormones. And your hormones will also have an adverse effect on your serotonin and your endorphins and all those things. And so it's like the perfect storm for me to be a nutcase right now. And that is exactly how I feel. And I make no apologies for it, not anymore. I used to be that person who would apologize for how weird I felt or who would kind of mask it. Not these days. So if you ask me how I'm doing, you better really mean it, because you're gonna find out.
And you're not a nutcase or crazy or any of those words people like to use to describe it. You're just dealing with your emotions. You're at a heightened emotional mental state.
Right. And it's like, I need y'all to let me live. Let me be great. And I don't want to argue about it. I don't want to have to defend it. And I want people to understand, although it's not normal, obviously human imperfection is what causes these things, but it happens. So it's normal in that sense. And I won't be vilified for it or made to feel bad about it. And I'm not going to give y'all cheerful Alicia if that's not how Alicia feels.
Right.
And I think it's so important that we are honest in these moments, because there are so many people going through the same things and they have not yet arrived at the space where they know how to govern themselves or how to share with people, because it's hard to explain something that you can't explain, right? Like, it's hard to make tangible to people something that is barely tangible to you, because what is happening, while there may be physical, side effects to it or physical symptoms, it's not physical.
Right.
To make people understand that despite you can have everything good going for you, like, and I think this is the reason why they blame so many fat people. Like, they tell fat people they're more prone to depression because they think that, like, being fat is the worst thing that can happen to you. And there are some fat people who feel like that. Cue Lena Dunham. But in all honesty, it's like, it wouldn't matter if I lost 200 pounds today.
Right.
And I got my hip back. And, things were great. I have a great marriage. I have great kids. I have a home that I love. I have a business that I love. And I would still have mental health issues. And nothing's going to change that. Some of it's genetic for people. It's hereditary. And they don't even know the reasons why anymore, what triggers certain people. So dealing with
a lot of it, like I was saying before, is, people always are talking about it in terms of your feelings, but it's chemicals in your brain at the end of the day. And so you can think as positively as you want. That's not going to change your chemical makeup in your brain. It's not going to change the fact that your brain doesn't fire off the serotonins that you need. So, like, for me, that's always been what's frustrating about my depression, is that it'll come on when everything is fine. Like, there isn't anything wrong. I can go to sleep and be perfectly fine and wake up and feel like I'm drowning. And it's not because some major thing happens. It's because my brain just did the thing overnight or stopped shooting off what I needed. And it's hard to explain that to people. And it's also hard living with. Like, do you know how awful it feels to be like, my life is wonderful, but I don't want to be here. And it's only because your brain telling you that, like, that's frustrating going through it, because you want to feel fine, because you're a logical person who knows you should feel fine, but you don't. And that is annoying.
So you made a good point when you talked about how you have all these wonderful things going on, but you can still. So a few years back, I made something called, I don't know if you guys can see that, the gratitude jar. Mm-hmm. And so every day, especially on my worst days, and some of these are years old, I will put my thoughts into the jar and just put down things that I love and are positive. And even when I don't have it in me to write and put something in here, I will go through them and open them.
Yeah.
And read them. Some people do gratitude journals. There's a gratitude jar. It sits on my desk. It's something that I will see, so I will always have access to it. And although it's not a cure-all, it's a coping mechanism. And I think that's one of the things people have to understand. There might not ever be, a cure-all in that sense, but there are ways that you can manage your mental health without having to lose it. And I think one of the best things for me has been able to have a support system. A lot of people don't have that, because a lot of people's family members and friends don't have the wherewithal to, like, try to understand. They want to fix it, right? When you love something, you want to fix it for them. And this is one of those illnesses that you can't fix for the person you love. And instead of trying to fix it for them, you have to ride it out with them. You have to be there for them. Sometimes you have to just listen and offer no advice. Don't try to give them a fix it unless they're saying something that indicates they're going to self-harm. Then you would definitely want to step in and do what you need to do to protect them from physically harming themselves. But
like literally, it's okay to say that sucks. Like, I would much rather hear that than you tell me to like turn that frown upside down, think about like it's okay if you don't have the answers. Obviously, if I'm talking to you, it's because I trust you and because I want to share with you. And it's okay to just be like, man, like even if you don't know what it's like that sucks that you're going
right,
through that. Like that's okay. We don't always need an answer. Sometimes we just need to get it out because you spent so much of it keeping it in. Like until I started talking to people about my depression, like nobody knew I had it. I'm so good at faking it. Like nobody, but like what they wouldn't realize is I would go to work and be like, hi, blah, 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 doing all my things, blah, blah, blah. Come home
and
and
lose
be
it.
like this on the couch until it's time for bed, go to bed, wake up, put my fake smile back on and go through life again. But I was really going through it. And people don't always realize there's actually a commercial that I saw once because, you know, we all have kind of grown up with a where does depression hurt everywhere commercial, right? Where the person's sad and down. So I love this commercial because it was an office and there's the one guy who kept like saying like good morning guys, good morning, and then there's the other guy who's like hey guys, hey, whatever. And then you find and then like at the end they're like hey, did you hear that so and so took their life? And they're like what? And then you realize that it was the chipper guy. And they're like, he was always so happy. He was always so peppy. He was always so all of these things. And the truth is that you don't know what someone's going through just by looking at them. Like maybe the guy who seems down isn't really down. He's just a quiet guy. Maybe the person who seems happy isn't really happy. They're just trying to mask it. Because I'm my happiest when I'm going through it because the last thing I want is for you to ask me how I'm feeling. Because like I said, when we started this, when I'm in it, like right now, like I just feel like every time I open my mouth, I want to cry. So when I'm going through it, I don't want to show that I'm going through it because God forbid someone asks me how I'm doing and then I start crying. So I'm happy and wonderful so that no one can recognize that I'm dying inside, you know? So you just can't, you just don't always know. And that's why people are sometimes shocked when something happens with someone because they mask it. But a lot of times your happiest people are really going through it, or we're faking happy because we don't want other people to feel what we feel.
Robin Williams was a great example of that. So many people were shocked, but I'm like, when you started to hear the stories of people who actually knew him and knew who he was, all the signs were there, and not in a way that they could have saved him, but there was indications that he was dealing with depression.
Yeah.
I I remember the moment I started to honestly share my journey about mental health. So many people were like, "What? You don't seem
Yeah.
normal." Yeah, because nobody's better at faking anything than a person who is depressed.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yep.
Spend our time masking, hiding, learning, and even to the sense my I had a psychologist a few years back who thought that I was on the spectrum, right? When she heard like my story of growing up and what my behaviors and things were like, and even to dealing with certain things now as an adult. And I never had a formal diagnosis, but that was her thought process was like, I think you are on the spectrum. And one of the things she said is people who are on the spectrum are very good with mimicking,
Yeah.
very good with mirroring because they have nowhere else to pull from when they're trying to figure out how to present themselves. And when I thought about that, I thought how that tied into depression and how much I learned to, do that all the time. So I have worked really hard to be really honest. So I don't hide it anymore.
Yeah.
If you ask me how I'm doing, I don't care. I'm going to tell you how I'm doing. If I'm in a particularly low moment, I'm going to tell you I'm in the trash moment. Don't expect too much from me. You're not going to get it. Like if you're expecting Alicia's got it in the bag, Alicia, she's not here right now. Come back.
Right.
See me when I'm back in the minutes. And I love the fact that I have learned now at this point in my life to set those boundaries. So when people are asking, I'm telling people no.
Mhm.
Sometimes I may offer explanation, sometimes I may not. But if you ask me right now, Alicia, can you do it? I'm probably going to say, no, I can't.
And no is a complete sentence. You don't have to offer an explanation unless you want to. No is a complete sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And boundaries are super important with this and putting yourself first. And even like you mentioned, sharing. And that's why I do so much with mental health. Like if you guys follow me on on my social media, I do like my Tuesday nights where we talk about what's on your mind, because the best way to remove the stigma is to talk about it. And not a lot of people talk about it. And I think it's important to see people, not just like the bad side or the villainized side of mental health, because anytime someone does something wrong, it's like, oh well, they have mental health issues. Like, it's actually a very small percentage of mental health people who are violent. But I think it's good to see people just living their life and also living with it, and it's something that I'm really careful with what I say now, because words are important. But instead of saying like I suffer from depression, I say I live with
Right.
depression, because I don't suffer from it. I mean, I suffer from it sometimes,
I suffer
but
with those
I live with it.
mental illness.
Yeah.
I wrote a blog article a couple of weeks back about, normalizing not just mental health, but mental illness. When we talk about mental health, it often falls under a safe realm to me. Like, people will acknowledge that your mind has health, right? Like,
Yeah.
take care of your mental health, make sure you're self-caring and self-loving, and
Well, I am big on that, because something I always say, because I volunteer with NAMI, is that everyone, just like everyone has a physical health, everyone has a mental health.
right. And
You
I'm
have to take care of it. But I think self-care has become such like a buzzword.
right. But not only that, it's the term mental health is comfortable for people. It's very general. It's not specific. When you start talking about actually dealing with mental illness, meaning now we're not just talking about taking care of the health of my mind. Now I am telling you that there is something amiss. My brain doesn't operate like yours, and this causes these emotional responses and these actions. People they get silent. They don't know what to say. They always feel like they're going to step in a pile of poop if they open their mouth. So schizophrenia is demonized. Depression is more palatable to most people because they don't really understand it. They think you're just sad.
I actually just sent out an email. I swear I'm not trying to plug myself, but I actually just sent out an email to a bunch of my therapist friends, because that What's on Your Mind on Tuesday, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. And I feel like we talk a lot about depression and anxiety, which makes sense because it's what the most people have. But there's OCD, there's personality disorder, there's psychosis, there's
bipolar disorder.
bipolar, schizophrenia. So I sent an email and I'm like, what I really would like to do for the month of May is do those lives, but specifically talking about the other ones besides depression and anxiety. So like, let's spend a half an hour really talking about what is schizophrenia, what are the symptoms, how do you talk to someone with it? Because I like OCD, because everyone loves saying like, oh, I'm so OCD. No, you're not.
I don't even know.
OCD is a real thing. And
Very much is. And even having tic disorders, most people do not talk about them. I have been contemplating how to discuss my own tic disorder because I've been very open with my son, with his permission, with him dealing with Tourette syndrome. But I have a tic disorder, and it's usually linked with my anxiety. I don't have Tourette's. Although that gene they think is something that I probably passed in my son, sorry kid. But I noticed that I had started to tick recently within the last couple of months, and I realized that it was aligned with the increase in my anxiety and things like that. So I'm hoping that once I'm back on medication that I will see a diminishment in that, because believe it or not, tics can be really frustrating. They can exhaust you, and they can cause you body pains if your tics are muscular, like if you're doing something that physically bothers you, or even if you're like clearing your throat, which is one of my tics, or making like a random noise. Like it's annoying, and that's an aspect of mental health that people don't talk about either, because it's not very common. They don't understand the links yet between neurological disorders and and depression. So there's so many facets of mental health and mental illness that I think deserve more conversation. And that while I'm all for Mental Health Awareness Month and things like that, I want us to be open to the discussion around mental illness, because it, like I said, it's demonized so much. Like, I have a history of schizophrenia in my family. On my dad's side, so I'm very familiar with it. I'm very aware of it. And these are people that I knew and loved. My grandmother died. She had schizophrenia, and she had her ways, right? By the time, as it was beginning to get worse, she was putting newspaper up in her windows and would pull over on the side of the road. And that was years ago when I was still a teenager, and she would think that the people were watching her or following her, and she put in foil on her antenna. And while that might seem odd and funny to some people, she was still my grandma.
Yeah.
And I loved her. And she was a person. She was a real person to me. She wasn't just her disease. And I think when people hear those terms, they automatically just decide that that's what you are. You are your disease, and you are no longer a person, an individual with feelings,
Yeah.
emotions, wants, desires, and that's just not true. So I really hope that as you know the conversations become more open, that that is something that we could really get into. I would really like it if you could just one more time tell everybody what you guys are going to be doing with NAMI and tell them where to follow NAMI Delaware and where to follow you as well. I really think this is important because we're going to wrap it up because we're not going to hold you guys hostage, but could you just one more time where
Yeah.
they can go?
I mean, you can follow me, that African Butterfly. If not already, I do try to bring awareness to mental health. I'm really actively involved with NAMI Delaware, which is the National Alliance of Mental Illness. And you can look in your state too. They have them in almost all states, and they're always looking for volunteers. And the thing that I love about volunteering with NAMI is that it's not just like, oh, okay, come volunteer and answer the phone or do some stamps. It's like, what are you interested in? What do you like doing? How do you want to contribute? So through that, like I enjoy doing facilitating and moderating. So I've gotten to moderate with that. So like the last Thursday of each month, we do a Zoom call. It's called Sharing Hope Community Conversations. We talk about different topics and have guests, and it's specifically for people of color. Anyone is invited. But it's specifically like we talk about like in terms of our culture, like Black culture, Hispanic culture, which is nice because sometimes you just need that space to like break it down, you know? But NAMI does a lot. You can find them. Like I said, they're national, or I do a lot with NAMI Delaware. They have YouTube where you can see some of our videos. So I'm just a huge advocate for talking about it. Like the more people talking about it, the more normalized it is, and the more that we can go from there. And if you do have like an organization or yeah, so if you do have an organization that you might want someone to come and talk to during one of their meetings, like I'm trained general presenter, so I've done schools like PTO groups, teachers, I've done church groups, fraternities. So you can, reach out to me or NAMI specifically for your area or anywhere, since it's all virtual now. And we do presentations as well. And most NAMIs also have training like mental health first aid. I think everyone should take if they can. It is just general signs to look for and how to help someone get the help they need. So just like we get CPR training, mental health training is something that NAMI, mental health first aid is something they offer as well, which is great.
Thank you so much for the information because I do think that's really important, and a lot of people just don't know where to begin. So I think it's really dope that you are well connected and partnered with NAMI. Another organization is NIM that I think you guys should be able to check out. And what I'd like to do is drop those links down in the description box today so you guys can check that out. And just keep up with myself at APY Blog and that African Butterfly. And I think we'll post on the More Than My Size page because
Oh, also, while you're dropping links at the bottom. So my brother has a t-shirt line called Believe Divergent. And for Mental Health Awareness Month in May, I convinced him that we should do a limited line specifically around mental health, and a percentage of all the proceeds, because with his organization, a percentage of all the proceeds go to organizations. Each quarter, he picks like a different organization. And for that month or those 3 months, that organization gets a percentage of all the proceeds, which is awesome. He's raised, I think, like $14,000 for different groups. So he's doing a great job. So for the next 3 months, April, May, June, if you get any of the shirts, the percentage will go to NAMI, but we have special 4 shirts specifically around mental health. One says, be kind to your mind. One says, mental health matters. One says, I think, speak up for what you believe in. And the other one says, grow through what you go through. So those shirts are available on the site, and we'll include the link below, but you can get it and then rep it for Mental Health Month.
here we go. So yeah, just keep up with all of the awesome things that the ladies of More Than My Size have going on. And most importantly, as we're entering into the month of May, if you know someone or you love someone or you yourself are a person who is dealing with mental health, talk about it. Using your voice is really powerful and important in these types of situations because it's not something that requires money. Open your mouth. Even if you think it's the most embarrassing thing in the world, if all you have to offer is to tell people how to support somebody with mental health, do it, because the more you know, right? Like,
And the more you'll be surprised when you speak up, how much just you sharing your story encourages other people to speak up who weren't speaking up before. There's so many people, and not that I'm like, oh, I said something, now they say something, but I do know some people directly because I started speaking up about it, felt more comfortable because again, that stigma, nobody wants to be the person who's like, oh, they have the mental health issues. But I think when you're a person who also has your shit together and you're like, oh, but I also have this mental health thing, then it's less of this like scary thing like, oh, if I have this, I'm a loser. It's like, no, here's this person with a career doing all those things and she lives with mental health. And so sometimes you opening up your story helps other people to share their stories, or you sharing about the difficult times you went through. Like when I say I went through months where I would just go home and be a zombie for months. It's not a great story. I don't enjoy it, but I know that me sharing that I went through that and got through it helps other people know that they can get through it too. So never hesitate to speak up.
don't discount the power in your own story. You do not have to be some huge influencer or a celebrity to make an impact on somebody's life. So I just beg of you guys to consider that, especially as we are approaching the month of May. We thank you guys so much for joining us today and letting us have some real raw talk with. I mean, we're always raw, but about topics like this, I think
Yeah.
these are conversations that are needed to happen, and it probably won't be the last time
It
either.
will not be the last. I already know.
We look forward to being able to do that, and I just appreciate us being able to come together, both of us, during the heights of some real raw moments for us, and to be able to be honest and real with y'all. It's appreciated. We hope you guys will come back for the next episode and we haven't scared you off.
I actually feel a little bit better getting it off my chest. You know, I feel.
Here we go, like it love. But as always, you guys, thank you for joining us and helping More Than My Size be the show that it is. We appreciate every single last one of you who support, follow, answer questions, share, or even if you're silent, your viewership matters, and we love you and we appreciate you for it. We'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.